Hi everyone, Michael Bilecki here with BDR. I am the routes manager and film director. We are just super excited for this webinar. I hope that we can do many of these in the future. onX Offroad has become a really great partner of BDR. I've been using this app a ton this last year on filming expeditions and all the scouting missions we do. It is super powerful. I feel like every time I pull it out, I learn something new. And as much as I feel like I know about it, I'm really excited for this class to learn even more. It's a really powerful app, and thank you all so much for being here and for supporting onX and for supporting BDR.
Ina, you want to go next?
I just want to say hi, everyone. I'm Ina Thorne. I'm the executive director at the organization. And yeah, just really excited to finally have this webinar with onX. Also have been using this app on all of our filming expeditions. Yeah, just love the product. And I'm so happy that so many of you have joined this webinar. It means that this information and learning more about onX for BDR riding is useful to people. So welcome everyone, and let's learn something new. So thanks so much for being here.
We're excited to have Ina and Michael here with us today. Love having the BDR crew with us. If you guys have specific questions, don't forget we do have the chat box for those of you guys that are just now checking in. onX has a whole crew in that chat box answering questions. And then at the end of this, we're going to have a chance to answer some of those questions. So if you have questions, drop them in the comment box in that chat box, and we will try and address them at the very end. Dan, you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, guys. I'm Dan Rains. I'm an onX Offroad ambassador as well as a Montana BDR Expedition team member. Really stoked you guys are all here for this masterclass. We're going to be going over everything that you guys need to know from downloading and importing tracks and routes from the BDR website directly into onX Offroad. I'm going to show you how to do that from a PC. It's also a lot easier to do it from your phone. iPhones, at least from my experience, are very simple to send GPX files from one place to another. So, but I'm going to show you how to do it the harder way because I feel like that's probably the best place to start. And then we'll go through all sorts of other things, how to turn visibilities for things on and off, and when to choose high quality or large files versus small for offline maps, as well as we're going to go over different layers, how to color code everything. So, and then Josh will pretty much take over from there, go over POIs and accessing 3D features and all that. So, if you guys want to get started, I will start by sharing my screen here, and I will take you guys over to here. All right, everybody see that okay? Should be on the onX Offroad base map, right?
It's looking good.
All right, so from here, you can just see I've got just a few things loaded up on the map, just the Montana BDR, so it's not overly clustered. So I'm going to dig right into it. So if you go up to your browser and you just type in BDR, take you right here to the website. And the quick way, if you want to just go right over to GPS tracks, click on that. And then you can go right into the things you need to know. After you run through all that FAQ, that'll help answer a lot of questions. You'll roll right into this little bit where you just need to give a few pieces of information, where you're from, nothing major, whether you're new or not. I'm not. And then right here, you've got your routes. So you've got main routes, main BDRs, and then down here, you've got BDR X's and then connectors. So I'm going to say, let's do Colorado BDR. After that, you're going to run through the terms and conditions. And if you agree, yes. Make sure you're not a robot. All right, hit submit. And now you have this little link right here. Click that. Then you'll scroll right up to the top. and you will open that file. See if it opens, or you can just go to this. It is not allowing me to open it. Let's try a show in folder. Some fun technical difficulties. Just bear with me for a moment. Let's go here. Let's go show in folder. It's not opening. Open file. All right, let's go to, why won't this open? This is fun. We did not do this before. All right, let's just take this and then let's go to save as. Let's just call it that file name and let's save it to the desktop. Boom. All right, so it's on the computer now. Not sure why it was giving me that grief there, but all right. So now you go back to your base map, and if you go to My Content and then hit the import button right here, select file from computer, then just go to your desktop, and it should be there. Let's try downloads. Okay, click that, open. Now let's import it. All right, so you can see here, it's all imported. Now what I like to do is I like to click the little dot, 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 and then hit add to folder. And then I like to go create new folder. Let's say Colorado BDR. Save that. So now it's all in one place. I like to do that just, I think it's clean. So then you go back to your content and there you go. You've got your Colorado BDR. So that is the most simple form of basically having it in there. So, all right, then let's move over to the next. One moment. All right, so now that this is all loaded in there, a lot of people don't like having too many things on the map, especially me. That's why I only have one thing open, the Montana BDR, which I'm going to close. And so this is the only thing available, which I like that for visibility. I think it's best if you don't have all your connectors or all your content loaded up there, kind of as one go. I think it makes things just a little bit too stuffy. So we're going to just keep that open, and then we're going to roll right into, let's see, turning on and off visibility. So for instance, I have the Washington BDR and I have the Northern California BDR and the Southern California BDR loaded on here. So the easiest way to turn visibility on and off is if you throw everything into a folder like that, you can just click over here and you can just hide the folder on the map. So Washington's gone now, Northern California is gone now, Southern California is gone now. So I like to do that just because it makes things just a lot cleaner. So let's get Montana off of there as well. Oops. Hide Montana. All right. And now you should have the only thing on the map is the Colorado BDR.
And really quick, Dan,
Yeah.
keep in mind for those of you guys that are watching, there's a couple questions that I'm seeing come across the chat. Dan is currently on the desktop version of onX. We will switch over momentarily to the iPad version so you're able to see both versions, but they are on, Dan is currently on the desktop version on a computer.
Yeah, and we were discussing this about how this is, probably for some people will prefer to use this method, but I think for most, when you go places and you go to events and they have, your GPX tracks already loaded, you're going to have just your phone or your Garmin, heads up display or whatever you use. So it's going to be much easier to just take that from a simple text message or an email and just pretty much right click and then throw it right into onX Offroad. So I like to show it this way just because, like you saw a little bit of the technical difficulties I had there. It's more steps than it needs to be, but it's still relatively easy. So the next thing I want to go over is offline maps, which is probably your most important feature, in my opinion, when you're doing any of these routes, because oftentimes you may have cell service, you may not, and we will go over that later. But before getting into an area where you know you're not going to have cell service, you want to go over to offline maps right here, and you want to create a new one. So you've got different resolutions here. You've got low, medium, high. So on the computer, the low is going to be 0.43 gigs. Medium and high are usually about the same. And it's going to show you, see that small little square is 8.3 miles by 6.4. A medium square is going to have less detail, but it's going to give you almost 30 miles by 23 miles. And then low, it's going to give you even less detail, but it'll give you 60 miles by 46 miles. So what I typically like to do if I am not familiar with the area at all, I like to start things out with at least the medium function. So let's go down here to the bottom of the Colorado route. I'm going to take this map and I'm going to center it right over the start. So somewhere about there. I like to center it to not be right on one edge, because just in case you get off the route, left, right, any direction, you still have a good amount of detail of that area. So I just hit save there, and now you've got that that small spot. So I like to continue to do that at least for, let's say, the first day or the first section of the BDR you're riding. So I'll overlay it a little bit like that, save it again, do that another time, and get one more, section in here. Sorry about the lag. Right about there. Save that. So now that's going to get you all the way from the start all the way into almost Telluride. So that's a lot of mileage there that you're going to have, and you can label that stuff. I typically don't, just because it's going to show up on your map like that. So you just click back into offline maps, or when you end up going into it by default, then you're going to have all of the detail within those areas. Um, so I think that's a super good tool to have if you're going to be staying in one particular area and you want to know more about, say, mines or ghost towns or little cool tidbits that are around. I would say, definitely use the high function, so that you can get, just a lot tighter to the area that you're at. So I used to do it all on high, but then I found out it took a really long time to go through and get all that. And most of the time when you're riding a BDR, you're not necessarily going to need all of that. You're going to be covering ground all day and not going to be shooting off the sides of your route. So you want things to just be, relatively, you want to know where you're at. So I think medium is usually the best, and high in certain functions. So that shows you basically your offline overlays of what you need, of the areas that you're going to be traveling. So if you go back into just your Discover mode, you're not going to see that. And you go back in your offline mode, and you're going to see all of those places that you have highlighted. Does that make sense? All right. Moving on to the next thing, the different available layers. Okay. This is probably one of the coolest functions, because we've got lots of cool layers that are very specific to onX Offroad. So you've got satellite resolution that you can use as your base map. I like the hybrid, because it comes with your topo lines, and I particularly like that because I like traditional maps. So this is going to be what your hybrid plus your satellite imagery is going to look like. You've also got your basic topo, um, which is simple. And if you're more of a traditional person, it shows nice contrast for, little chutes and gullies, and where you have terrain traps, creeks, things like that. Um, I particularly like the hybrid better. But then also recent imagery, and this one I just started exploring more, it's going to show you things that might be happening. Like, look at this. Up in the mountains here, we've got snow, we've got, a lot of different changes and kind of what's going on. This would be helpful for, say, if a fire has recently gone through there, what looks charred, what might end up being an area that you cannot ride because you're going to run into closures of that area. So that's a really, really cool base map. All right, let's go back to hybrid and then let's get out of Colorado here. Let's just go to Montana. How about that? Oop, cancel that. Let's hide this. Let's show Montana. And let's get over there. Bear with me. There's some lagging of the computer. All right. So here we are. This is the start of the Montana BDR. And the next thing I want to go over is with those layers that I was just talking about. Some of my favorite ones are like, let's say this is West Yellowstone and the Island Park area where you would start the Montana BDR. There's definitely some spotty cell service in this area. So if you go down into your layers, you've got cell coverages. So you can turn on AT&T and see where that hits. It doesn't look like it's super great through the middle section of the gravelies here. Let's turn that off. Let's see what Verizon has. Verizon looks pretty good, actually. So let's see what T-Mobile has. T-Mobile is going to be good right along the main roads, but then that whole section through the gravelies, you're not going to have very good cell service at all. So that's an awesome layer. I like it a lot. I would say one of the most useful ones nowadays, especially because the times of the year that we all run these BDRs, is active wildfires, where those are going to be at. Right now, nothing's really popping up with that layer on. There are a couple little hits right here that show you there are some small spots. I'm sure if I backed out of there and got closer into Canada, there's a lot more fires going on up there. But that's definitely just one of those things that you want to look at often, especially if you're heading out to the Idaho BDR, the Washington BDR, Oregon BDR, August, September. It seems like there's always some fire somewhere. So having that is an awesome layer to have. Precipitation as well. So there you go. Look at that. You've got rain, probably some snow up there in the mountains. Another thing to keep your eye on, kind of like a Doppler overlay. Temperature, we'll just show that. That's pretty consistent for Montana, I'd say most of the time. What else? Another one, if you are big in topography, you like slope angles. You like to see, how steep things are. Kind of where, let's see if we can get in here. Something. Let's go right into this area here. So yeah, you can see, oh wow, like you could look ahead and be like, the stuff we're going to be riding tomorrow, it looks like it's going to be a lot of up and downs and a lot of real steep sections. And, I think that's definitely great to visualize so that, people are always asking on BDR trips, like, whoa, you've ridden this, like, what's tomorrow look like as far as like, is it going to be really hard? And you're like, well, I don't know what's hard to you, take a look at this and oh, maybe this downhill section right here looks a little scary. Um, this section looks pretty nice and flat up through a glade. So I think those are pretty cool. I turn those on sometimes when I just want to take a peek. I don't love having that on all the time because I think it'll cloud things up. Um, but I think that's awesome. And then the last layer I want to go over is dispersed camping. I think dispersed camping is really cool because it allow you to, anytime you're on your route, to be like, oh, okay, we're in the national forest land here. Like we can pretty much get off trail and find a place to just go camp that anywhere we really want, it's BLM land or, anything like that. It's awesome because most of us, not all of us, but most of us, I would say, do these BDRs and we spend at least half the time camping and we want to be in places where we're not going to be ran off. So, just right here, right outside of town here, just north of I-90, you've got tons of places that you could camp. So I think that's a pretty wonderful feature. So, and then segueing into, I'm going to let Josh take over. He's going to go over some color coding, as you can see.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dan. All right, let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen. Keep in mind that we are switching over to an iPad now. So you will see what the iPad interface looks like. We're starting out here just as a quick introduction. I've ridden several BDRs. I ride currently a 1290 Super Adventure R. I am a professional photographer and videographer and pretty much just love being off-road. So I live in this app, I plan in this app, and when I'm off-road and disconnected from the world, it's my my lifeline a lot of times. So we're just going to jump right into Montana BDR because Montana's kind of that hot one right now. Everyone's talking about it. If you haven't seen the film yet, I tell you what, you got to go find a premiere near you because it looks like an amazing BDR. I have not ridden it yet, but it is planned for my crew and I to ride it the first week of July. So let's jump into how I set up my maps with the color coding. As you can see right off the bat here, I have every section an opposite color. And one of the cool things that BDR is doing now moving forward is when you import the GPX file, it already comes pre-color coded. Now I've been doing this for a long time, so I have my own colors. So I've changed the colors from what it imports as from the BDR crew. But what I like to do right off the bat is every section is its own color. So section 1 and section 2 are opposite colors. I like to use blue and yellow because as I'm going at speed down the trail, I'm able to glance down quickly at my phone and glance up and make sure that I'm still on trail and I don't have to worry about seeing it. I also, like Dan, prefer the hybrid map. I like the topo lines. I like being able to see the satellite. But sometimes when you're in this heavily green area, it's hard to see a different color. That's why I use the blue, and that's why I use the yellow that you see here. So how to switch that? All you have to do, it's pretty quick and easy, especially on an iPad or a phone. You just click on the line, come down here at the bottom, you click edit, and you can choose whatever color you want, whatever color that fits your needs. Like I said, I do blue and yellow for my sections of my BDRs. And then you can change it to different styles and weights. And the other cool thing, while you're in this edit scene or edit screen, you can see a bunch of different information panels. So distance, section 1's 105 miles long right off the bat. By the way, I have not gone 379 million miles an hour. But, I mean, we can try on a 1290 Super Adventure R. So that is one way to change colors. I'm going to keep it blue, save it. We go up to section 2, and I'll do this for every BDR that I ride. I click on the section. I go into edit. And I change the color. You can change it to any color you want that fits your needs. Like I said, I prefer yellow. I'm going to keep it yellow because it just is easy to glance down and look. Now, kind of staying in that color coding theme, I actually color code every single one of my points of interest. So Coming into points of interest. Now, your guys' color coding might be different. It's unique to every rider. My crew and I, when we ride, my color codes are green for gas. Green means go. So every single point that comes pre-populated, I will go in and label that green. And it's the same concept as the sections. Go in, click on it, click edit. I select green. Now, if you want to change that to any other color, if you want to have it red, you can make it red and then take it one step further and you can change the icon. Now, onX is awesome and has a whole bunch of pre-populated icons that you can choose from. So we have the fuel one selected here. I'm going to go back and change that one to green, because in my mind, green means go. Coming down to the next one that I always label is my viewpoints or picture spots. I have a camera in my hand every time I ride. I typically ride with about 5 cameras on me or on my bike when I'm riding a BDR. So camera spots, lookout spots, points of interest where I can get off the bike and take photos is extremely important to me. So I label them yellow so they're really high vis. That way in the morning when I'm planning what section we're doing, I can say, all right, these are the spots that I'm stopping. Super easy to point out. Same concept. Click on it. Go down to edit, down at the bottom. Click edit. Change the color. Now this one is particularly a lookout spot, so I put it with binoculars. Moving on, there are some icons that I don't label, that I just leave as your standard onX black pin or waypoint. For example, the Montana-Idaho border, I'm just going to leave that black because as I'm riding along, I know I can just pass by that. If I see it coming down my map on my phone as I'm riding at speed, I don't need to worry about what it is. I can just ride past it. I don't need to slow down. I don't need to ruin my pace. And then everything that is a danger for me or caution is always red. Red means eyes up, get in rider attack mode, and plan for something. And obviously this one came pre-populated from BDR, deep sand, caution. So I'm going to come in here, mark that with red. That way when I'm riding at pace and I glance down and I see a red waypoint coming down my line, I'm definitely going to have my eyes up, ready for something, slow down, and just kind of be cautious of what's going on. So color coding, especially with the icons, I'm typically zoomed in about here on my phone. This is about the distance that I can see. Moving down. We're just going to move on down these sections and then we're going to come back. Another viewpoint. I know that's a viewpoint because of my color coding. I've been using the same color coding for every single BDR. So now I get to the point where I go red, bad, green, gas, yellow, photos. And you'll see one of my other colors coming up here. There's another red spot, grizzly bears. Yeah, don't camp there.
That's
my
funny.
Next color that I use, if you ride with me or you know somebody that rides with me, you know that I am a fish out of water when it comes to camping. When I camp, I have to swim. So my swimming spots and my swimming holes, I have to mark. And of course, I come in here, I edit it, I change it to blue so that I know, all right, guys, there's a swimming hole coming up. And you can change the icon to a swimming icon. They have a ton of different options for icons, which is always great. Moving a little bit further down, I do have a couple other colors that I use. I use this cyan or teal color for a camp spot or potential camp spot. As the day progresses and we're getting tired towards the end of the day, I can know, all right, we're coming up to a camp spot. We're getting there. We're close. I don't have to zoom in and start searching. I can stay zoomed out this far and know, all right, there's a camp spot around the corner because I always use teal. Now, if you zoom in close, it's also a swimming hole right on a river. So you're probably going to bet that I will be there camping and swimming. All right. So color coding is extremely important. I love it. One of the other features that I absolutely love is the 3D mapping and how I plan using the 3D mapping feature to do an alt harder section or an alt extreme section or any form of red line. Now, that was one of the things I didn't cover in the color coding of the sections. I do color code all of my alt harder sections as red dashed lines. Okay, but one step closer, I like to go through when I'm planning ahead of time. I love coming down, getting in really close and planning out this route. I want to know if I can do it and if I can ride it on a 1290 Super Adventure R, because those things are a beast and they're super heavy. So I like to get in really close and zoom in and just trace the line and follow it. So as I'm tracing, I'm noticing this entire road so far looks like paved or light gravel road, and I'm just going to keep following it until it turns off. And you'll see me following. All right, we're turning off to a, looks like potential gravel road. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to use 2 fingers on the iPad and iPhone, and I'm going to tilt down or tilt up. That's going to determine, all right, is this steep? Is this hard to ride? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start going through the route, still watching kind of the terrain that you see. It still looks like a gravel road. Kind of just following the alt harder lines. It's always good to just, I mean, it takes time to do this, but it allows you to know, all right, this is what I can plan for. So what I did there was I took 2 fingers and I'm just rotating the screen. I'm still in that 3D map. So I know that I'm going to be in this kind of valley between 2 hills, zooming in. I'm not seeing anything too crazy just yet. So I might kind of just skip over, zoom out, skip over. All right. And all right, this potentially this turnoff looks like it might be kind of steep coming up here. So I'm going to take this even further, zoom in and start to follow the road using the 3D map features. Now, if you look right here, it starts to turn into double track. I'm going to keep note of that as I'm scrolling along and watching this double track road. And as you see, kind of zooming in, zooming out, it's still kind of a double track. This might be a little bit deeper double track just from that 3D mapping. Cruising through. And then as I zoom in and come around the corner right here, I'll notice, all right, what do I see? I see some pretty big ruts. That's going to notify me that I might be hitting some sand, might be hitting some mud, not quite sure. Do you think I can handle it? It's just one of those notes where, okay, we're going to experience some sand or deep ruts as we go through this. Same here. Still in that 3D map, I can see these deep ruts. So especially for the harder sections, I'm coming in, zooming in, getting into that 3D mode just like this. You can tell this entire track right here is going to have some 2-track deep ruts. So that's going to determine, do I want to ride this section? Is it going to be too challenging for me, and what gear I have? one of the other things that I use the 3D mapping for is I come in, you guys already know, I like to take photos. I am a big proponent of taking photographs. So let's come back to that first photograph section on section 1. Henry's Lake access turnoff. The 3D maps are powerful for what kind of photos you can take and also finding campgrounds with a view. So from this spot right here, Henry's Lake, what I like to do is I like to grab 2 fingers, put it down into 3D map mode, and see what view I'm going to see. As you can see right there, we're going to get a pretty killer view of the mountain ranges. And if you rotate, we're going to get a pretty killer view of those mountains there as well. That's all done with the 3D mapping feature, which I like to use just for taking photos, but I also like to use it for planning out campgrounds. So I'm going to come over here to a secret spot that I love. This is one of my favorite spots to camp. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to see, okay, first of all, zooming in, seeing an established campground, you can see that there might be a potential fire ring there. And as I spin around, I can go, what I'm doing when I'm mapping this is I'm checking around the outside of those edges. I'm noticing that there's no trees, okay? That's going to tell me that there's going to be a decent view of what's around me, but take it a step further and put it into 3D mode, and you've just got a beautiful, absolute amazing view. And the cool thing with this is you can rotate it. Let's rotate. And it'll tell you that there's an absolutely epic view of Mount Rainier. So I'm going to take that, plan ahead, and get a photo like that. It allows you to plan ahead and find really cool camp spots using the 3D mapping. Something that I use a lot. So if I ever find a spot, say for example in Montana, which I haven't ridden yet, I can go to the higher elevation spots and just take a look at what the views are going to be, where I'm going to find those really cool, epic campsites that are just high up in the mountains. And one of the cool things that is just released recently is BDR allows 3D mapping in offline maps. So that is absolutely awesome, being able to download 3D maps in offline maps. Now, last but not least, we are going to touch on the route builder. It looks like we have a little bit of time for route builder. I think we got some time. So for example, just one tool that you need. Typically when you're riding summertime, you might hit a wildfire or you might need to reroute for whatever reason. And being able to use that route builder is super, super useful if you need to reroute. So let's assume that right here in the basin turnoff where there's food but no gas, I need to route build a new route, and I can't do this entire portion right here. Say I need to skip that section for whatever reason. Maybe I have a mechanical on my bike, or I'm going to meet up with my buddies, or there's a wildfire. So I'm going to come down here and go into the tools to route build. Click on the route builder here. I'm going to start right there and just click. and it'll allow me to build the route, and it snaps, as you see. It snaps to the lines and say, I need to go all the way to here. So click that, boom, done. Now you have a route, a workaround. If there's a wildfire, you have a mechanical, or whatever issue you might have, you have a quick snap to the route tool, and then you can go in and label it, wildfire workaround, whatever you want to label it, and then you can label it with your colors. You can see how long that route is. That's an 86-mile workaround, roughly. And then you can color code it if you need to. So one of the really cool tools that I use constantly when we're out and about, because occasionally you never know, you need to reroute when there's something going on the track.
Can I add to that, Josh?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that, like, zoom back into just a spot like that, where you have primary roads, and then you have a lot of secondaries, and then, like, say if you follow closely to the actual BDR route, there are a lot of offshoots you see. And I will say that it's funny, that section you just routed was, I'd call it the broken helmet route, because I literally did that route on the Montana BDR. But there was some offshoots from where we were that I could have taken, like all those dashed lines, right? That you see, all those little motor vehicle use maps, those little ranch roads or whatever you want to call them. I would say if you don't know the area and you need to get out of a certain spot, maybe build a route through like what you're doing there, and then go down it a little bit and see if you're going to run into basically a dead end or overgrown, or a road that is still maybe labeled on the motor vehicle use map, but it's not a road anymore. It was a clear cut for trucks to get into, and it hasn't been driven in years. And so I like to look at, if you're going to build a route, like there you go. So you've got a secondary road that's actually seems like it's probably at least an established gravel road, or it could be paved. So it would be a safe bet to build that route and then travel out that way if you need to, rather than, jumping into one of those dashed lines and going, oh, well, it's a smaller distance if I travel this. Because I have ran into this before where I've been like, okay, I'm just going to follow this out. And then it's actually worse off than if I would have either continued on the route ahead, or if I would double back on the route that we came from and then got to a point where I know, okay, we're closer to civilization here. And now this get around is actually a viable solution.
Yeah, that's great. So to kind of go off of what he was saying, if I broke down here where my green dot is that you see on the map, and I need to get out using the route builder, I started with the green dot, and all I'm doing is touching. It's building the route for me, kind of wrapping around those roads and getting me back to what you can tell is civilization.
Yeah.
So a really good tool if you have a mechanical or an issue where you need to get to civilization quickly, you can build the route and it'll follow current roads. And I think that leaves us with time to answer questions. I will leave my iPad up if we have questions. The onX team has been monitoring the chat much more than us.
Hey Josh. Okay, the chat has been busy tonight, and so has our Q&A section. Dan, could you walk through on your desktop version how to access layers? And we specifically have some folks who are interested in how do you get to the weather and smoke and fire.
Sure. Yeah, give me just one moment.
I went ahead and stopped sharing for you guys. That way Dan can take over on the desktop version.
All right, let me go here. All right, so layers. This is a good one. So here we are, we're on our standard desktop version, onX Offroad. Over here to the right-hand side, you've got this kind of diamond stack right here. Those are going to be your layers. So you can change your base map from whatever you'd like. I think just for this sake, for just clean, if we just go over to the topo, right, there's less, it's less busy. Now, if we scroll down to layers, we can turn any of these on and off. So precipitation layer, that's going to show you where's the rain at section 1 there. That's just north of Island Park, Idaho, just south of entering into Montana. So there's your
Keep in
precipit.
mind, those participation layers don't work without service.
Correct. So that's definitely something to keep in mind for sure. Also, turn that off, turn temperature on. So this is just all pretty much the same temperatures. It's going to be anywhere from, looks like 20 to 35 degrees. So if you zoom out, you'll see definitely places that are much warmer will show up. See if my computer lags less. So you can see down south of kind of more towards eastern Idaho, it's going to be a lot warmer out here near Rexburg. So we can turn that off. So active wildfires, if those are going, you can turn that on. And then also, if you turn the air quality index on, that will show you. Let's see. Zoom in a little bit here. Right, let's turn off active wildfires. I'm not seeing any overlays in this area that show the air quality being anything unhealthy, so it's not showing up as far as like a heavy layer. Let's see if we can back out to somewhere where there is going to be some unhealthy air. Let's go over to, it's like this area right here, near Little Belt. So let's turn the active wildfire back on. I'm assuming there might be a fire in this vicinity. So looks like there's some small fires all the way around this area, which is creating, you know, poor air quality in this zone. We can turn that off and that will show you. That's all gone. Let's turn wildfire smoke on. I'm assuming we'll get a little bit popped up in here where those fires were. Not seeing a ton of smoke sections. I'm sure this will be a very inundated map though with those layers when we get into fire season. You know, it's in Montana right now. It's winter, so we can try to go down to, let's try northern or central California. That might be a bit more active. So right up here, looks like in Northern California, there's going to be, looks like there's an active wildfire in that area. And if we turn the smoke quality off, you can see that kind of in this northern area right here that there's nothing now. Well, if we turn it back on, then we've got lots of little sections that are just showing the wildfire smoke. Here we can turn historic wildfires on, I suppose, and see if there's anything that pops up there. I did not see anything pop up. All right. Is there any other layers that you guys want to go over?
Not necessarily a layer, Dan, but we do have a lot of people interested in the comments on when you're planning a BDR trip, how do you find gas along the way?
Okay, that should not be a hard one. If you upload a BDR route directly to onX, then you should have POIs, points of interest, that will be listed. So if we go over into like my content, let's go to the Washington BDR. We can open that up, and there should be a running tally of all the things, all the waypoints that are within that section. So let's say if you start at section 1 here, there's not going to be a lot of gas except for right when you start. But there always is going to be like this this is further up in the route. There's going to be this POI that's listed right there as your gas stop. So, and the BDR is one of those things where it's very well documented where you need to get fuel, and we always say that you never pass a fuel stop. So when you're out on any of these BDRs, if it's a 70-mile leg that you have to do, make sure you get gas at any of the labeled ones. And there might be some others on the way, especially if you have to do a section of like highway or slabbing. Other than that, we can go to, let's see.
And keep in mind, like I said earlier, each section you're able to see the mileage and how long that section is.
Correct.
So when you're planning ahead of time, say if you have a KTM 500 and you've got a smaller tank and maybe you have a jerry can on the back or something like that, you can plan, okay, I can ride this section, but I need to stop and get gas. And typically what we're seeing is at the end of every section, there is some form of gas stop. But when you click on the section, like right now, Dan has clicked on Washington section 5, you can see that that entire section is 161 miles long. But you can see that about halfway through that section, there is a gas stop.
And a secondary gas stop located for any reason. If this fuel stop is out of fuel, it looks like this one is off the path, but it is a place to get fuel. So in 162-mile section, no matter what you're on, it's advisable to get fuel at those stops. You're not going to find fuel like, out here along, off the beaten path up on these in the wood section. So it's only going to be when you pop into these small towns.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to steal your screen really quick to share something that I've got about that. I can show you on the iPad version as well. So let's run over to Washington section here. If you're in the section like this, let's go into the gas stop right there, food and gas. You can actually drag your finger on this map in the upper left-hand corner where you see the elevation, and you can follow along and see how far that is exactly. So you can say, okay, about this section is 103.4 miles long, and at about, let's call it 41 miles, there's a gas stop. So, okay, maybe my bike gets, X amount of miles per gallon. Do I need to stop there? Yes. Okay. I mean, like Dan said, the motto on a BDR is don't ever pass a gas stop. You don't know if you need to reroute and if something happens. So always fill up when you have the chance. But that is an option, that tool to use, kind of being able to drag your finger and see, okay, the highest elevation is going to be 6121. And that's at about the 63 mile mark. So just seeing this on the iPad versus the desktop version, you're just dragging your finger on there. And as you drag it, you can see the little black dot moving. It'll show you your elevation. So if I zoom out and show that entire section, as I move my finger and drag it, you can see it moving along the route where you need to go and the stops that you need to plan ahead. So good question on the gas.
All right, guys. So I think that That's most of the questions. I did drop in the onX Offroad support email and phone number in the chat. So anyone who has an open question, grab that before we close the webinar. You can reach us tomorrow if you have more questions. As a reminder, this class has been recorded and it will be available on the onX Offroad YouTube channel right after we end the webinar tonight. And BDR, Josh, Dan, I can't thank you guys enough for joining onX Offroad. We get a lot of requests for how to import BDR GPX files into the app, and I think this was a great starter. And from the chat, it looks like people are really interested in another class. So
And
thank
I
you.
have one more question because it sounds like we're potentially doing another class. In the comments before Melissa clicks end, what do you want to see in our next class? What's some stuff that you want to learn? What's some questions that you have regarding BDR and onX and riding? What do you want us to address? Put it in the comments real quick. You got a couple minutes before Melissa hits end. Light up the chat box for Melissa and the team to read.
Great shout, Josh. Michael, do you have anything to add before we close the webinar?
I just want to thank everyone for being here. We do have a pretty comprehensive FAQ page on our website, ridebdr.com, has some more info. And a few of the comments I saw coming in regarding colors, all of our newest routes are being put through a software that's able to automatically import the proper track colors into onX, which is really cool. This has been great. I think there's a lot more to learn with this app, and I look forward to more classes just like this.
Melissa, if I can also chime in, it seems that a lot of people want very, very basic foundational information on how to download the tracks into the onX app on the phone. So maybe like we should do like a BDR onX 101 class, and then you know, a little bit more of what we've covered today. But let's maybe plan another class that's a 101 kind of foundational class, and make sure that we serve the community of riders who are maybe just beginning to use the app for BDR navigation.
I think that that's a phenomenal idea. One thing that we didn't cover is anything that you do from your desktop or your iPad does automatically go to your phone. But phones are what we're all traveling with nowadays. So it makes a lot of sense to do another class and have that be phone specific. So great call out.
Yes, thank you, onX team, for organizing this. This was really helpful.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're 2 minutes over, and on the East Coast, that's after 9 o'clock for some folks. So thank you guys for joining in. This has been phenomenal. I promise this won't be our last BDR class. Thank you guys for joining. Reach out to onX if you have additional questions, and BDR also has an amazing support team as well. So for tonight, good night, everybody, and thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.